Welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast. I am Helen Veru. This podcast is dedicated to help anyone connected to preteens and teens to give them tools, empower and inspire teachers, high school senior leaders, and parents to build the future leaders of tomorrow. We discuss about controversial and relevant topics related to the world of education, the main problems you are facing, and solutions to help you navigate your journey. We want to make a positive change in education by bringing on experts that will give you a different perspective on how you can solve the hardship you are facing today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Empowering the Next Generation podcast with me, Coach Helen. We are here to inspire, to empower, to develop leaders, and as well to create meaningful connections. We want you to understand that we are sorting out for you real problems with real solution and real impact. Today, we have an amazing guest speaker. Her name is Vicki Maguire. She started teaching in 1997. She looks so young if you see her. She became a head of English in 2004 and worked in 2 schools as an assistant head teacher. And then she went into training as a coach and developed her career coaching, supporting staff and pupils in each of the schools that she actually worked and developed her philosophy of coaching and leadership style. She as well worked in different organizations. She is also the leadership performance coach on the NPHQ National Leadership Program. She has created and presented as well the We Lead Well podcast and the We Lead Well company that she's actually created. She interviewed as well in the podcast head teachers, school senior leaders, prominent educationalists about leadership and well-being, and she has created and delivered as well women-led group coaching program for female in school leadership. So we want to welcome Vicki on board. Can you say hi to Vicki, everyone, as she's here?
Hello.
Hi, Vicki. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. You're here to talk about leadership and well-being. I love the job that you do because I believe that it is well needed in the sphere of education, in the field of education nowadays. And you have done the path. You have shown that to people that you were a teacher, you went to the ladder, and now you are here to share your experience, to discuss about what you've seen, the do's and the don'ts, and how people can lead well in what they're doing. It can be for parents, for teachers, for senior leaders, and it is so needed. So just, Vicki, tell us, how did you start your career as a leadership coach, really?
It was because I burned out from being a deputy head. I'd been a teacher and a school leader for so long, and I'd given so much. I'd brought 2 children up. I've got 2 boys, and I'd brought them up, and I'd given everything that I'd got. I ended up being a little husk of my former self in the end when I suffered from the burnout, and I'd been working in a bit of a toxic school, separated from my husband, and everything just sort of came crashing down around me, and I just thought I need to do something different. And I'd always working with staff and pupils and helping them to develop. I'd learned about coaching many years ago and loved the philosophy and the approach. So I would always use it in all of the roles that I did. So I thought I'm going to train. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to see if I can make a new career out of it. So I trained as a coach, and I set up We Lead Well. And the rest is history. I'm 4 years down the line and really, really enjoying what I'm doing, and hopefully having an impact on other people and helping. I think that the main goal of it was to help other female school leaders not end up at the point of crisis that I'd ended up at, because I'd not looked after myself. And it helped understand that crucial link between well-being and leadership.
Awesome. And I think as well that a lot of teachers and senior leaders can relate to your story. The burnout is something that is overwhelming in most of the schools. People feel that there is the pressure there, like they have to tick boxes. There is they have to really perform in their job. But now you are talking about now well-being and leadership. So just explain what is the link between those two words.
I think the link is just complete, like you can't have one without the other. So if you are going to be an effective leader, you need to be well physically, mentally, and emotionally if you're going to be in a really good place to lead well. And the well-being is just as important as the leadership. I don't think either is more important than the other, but you have to take care of yourself. And I think the challenge that we face in education at the minute is that sometimes well-being is seen as an action or something that you can do. You can put cakes on in the staff room, or you can have a well-being evening, you can do yoga, mindfulness. And while I'm not dismissing those, well-being is something else. It's about coming back to yourself, and it's about looking after your own well-being, mental well-being, emotional well-being, physical well-being. And it's different for different people as well. So you have to have really good self-awareness so that you know what you need to keep yourself in the green zone. And when I say green zone, I mean, I'm talking about sort of the parasympathetic nervous system and the fight or flight that we go into. And I think a lot of school leaders and teachers, they exist in the hyperarousal zone. So because it's a job that's charged with emotion, you're dealing with real people and humans all the time, and there's a lot of emotion involved in that, and it can be really draining. So I think there's a lot of looking at yourself and thinking about, where am I at the minute? How am I feeling? And if I'm not where I want to be, you get too much adrenaline, too much cortisol, you get into that stress zone, and it's terribly bad for you. You can't make good decisions.
It is.
It gets to long-term health problems. So you've got to be able to recognize where you are and come back to yourself and ground yourself and really focus on what you need to do to try to keep yourself in the green zone, because only then can you actually lead well. Then you can focus on leadership, then you can focus on building relationships, then you can focus on creating a vision, making decisions, doing all those things that come as part of leadership. You need to do them from a position of being well in yourself.
Yes. And I think it's important that people, especially teachers and senior leaders or even parents, that they have to lead from a place where they can't lead from an empty cup. They need to lead from a full cup. And this is something that I realize in education or any other field is that we don't really understand the concept of leadership. Leadership is all about self. It's all about knowing you first, having that inward knowledge about your values and your belief and the things that matters to you. Once you are focused on that part, then you will be able to see how you can help other people. And that's what I think this concept has to be brought into school, not just allowing people to be in place in a position as a teacher, in a position as a senior leader, but really understanding what is leadership. And once we understand that, that's why I really focus, as I was telling you, onto student leadership, is we help them to understand those questions from a younger age. Can you believe, Vicki, if you had known this stuff when you were younger, there are so many choices that you would have made differently because of knowing something. And I believe that the what is hard for some people is ignorance. When you don't know, you make decisions based on what you don't know. And you shared all of this, and I believe that it will really help parents, teachers, and senior leaders to really think about where they are in their journey and how they can actually start like working in the green zone. So from there, like, how can you show kindness in our leadership? How can we show kindness in our leadership? What do you think, Vicki?
I think that that's all about meeting other people as human beings, recognizing that we're all human beings and we're all struggling to be
Mm.
beings. Like life is hard and life is a challenge. You
Yes.
sail through it and do really well, but you have to recognize that not everybody else is able to do that.
Yes.
And I think kindness in leadership is about really getting to understand people, your colleagues in the team. And I think in schools, a lot of the time, we say we know people, but if you say, do you know your staff? It'd be like, yes, I know that person is a really good teacher and they can do this well and they can do that well. But do
Wow.
you understand your staff? Do you know
I
what
love it.
drives them, what motivates them,
I love it.
how their brain works, what sort of person they are, what's
Yeah.
happening in their personal life? Do you have that deeper connection with them and that deeper
I
understanding?
love it. I love it.
That's what kindness is. And it doesn't mean just letting people do what they want and being walked all over. You can still have it's kind for people to have high expectations of
Expectations. Yeah.
and to expect the best from people.
Mm.
Also, an element of kindness in leadership is also providing honest feedback to people, because a lot of the time we don't provide enough feedback to the people who are
Mm.
in our teams, and then we're surprised when they carry on doing what they're doing.
Yes, it's
If
true.
you provide feedback, all you're telling people is that what they're doing is the right thing, and they would
Yeah.
carry on doing it. So that's another element of kindness. And I think sometimes when we get caught up in the whirlwind of school, you're on the treadmill, it can be really easy to make assumptions about people and judge other people.
Mm.
But if you're going to take a kind approach to leadership, you need there's something called generous interpretation, and it relies on I suppose, the thinking that nobody really does things to specifically upset you.
Mm.
When you are thinking about something that someone has done or how they've behaved that you've not approved of and that you maybe need to talk to them about, be generous in your interpretation of what it was. So, it's a really easy one, isn't it? You're driving down the road and someone pulls out in front of you and your initial reaction is to go, oh, you absolute...
I know.
And sometimes we do the equivalent of that in work. Someone's
Mm.
input their data and we're like, oh, why can't you input your data? But if you think about
Yeah.
driving the car is trying to get to hospital because they've just had a phone call that
Mm.
son or daughter has been in an accident and they're trying to get to the hospital, it's generous interpretation. There's a reason why that person has done that, and it's not to upset you. And it's the same in a school. If someone's not input their data, there's a reason why they've not done it. They've not done it to upset you. And being kind is about going to that person and saying, I've noticed that you've not input your
That's
data.
it.
I'm
That's it.
curious as to what the reason for that is.
That's it.
And then listen to them. Kindness is listening as well. And that's how you get to understand people. So it's lots of things, but
But
it's humans.
humans, but I think as well it's hard for even high school senior leaders when they are in that place, to really because maybe they themselves, they don't have that kind of kindness from above. So they are trying to cope with all the tension, all the pressure themselves, and they have to give, but like to their staff, what maybe they don't have. And I would even go further. I talk about, for me, someone who is not really understanding kindness, it's as well is an issue of the heart. And if you don't understand certain things in terms of empathy, compassion, it's really hard for you to connect with people because it all comes maybe from your trauma, from what you experienced when you were younger, and you have not dealt with when you were younger. And it all comes with the well-being parts, isn't it? So trauma as well can create blinders spots that doesn't allow you to see what other people are feeling, and your heart is so hard and that you can't really relate to where they are, what the other person is dealing with. So it's so much deeper than what we see when we talk to people. That's why I love to observe people. And even I would even add from that is that I believe that even senior leaders, they, as you were saying, they don't know their stuff. If they knew the potential that each member had, they could actually really grow their potential. You have teachers who have who have so much gifts that is not exploited in the community. It's not exploited because the head teacher or the senior doesn't know their stuff. So if they knew that, they would say, okay, now you can create an inset for us. Now you can do this. They're going to be utilizing what their teaching staff has, and they could actually they would feel included. They would feel part of a community because they would know that that head teacher, that senior leader knows me, so I can contribute. And that's what we want, contribute to the school community.
And that's the difference between, I think what you're talking about there is people who I work with when I do one-to-one coaching, a lot of the time they say they struggle with delegation. And actually, what I try to, I suppose, help them to understand is that there's a difference between delegation and allocation. You can allocate work to people, but if you delegate effectively, you have to understand people. And that's exactly what you're just saying. You have to understand what their passions are, what their skills are, what they love doing. And if you can then give them things to do that bring them joy, that they enjoy, recognizing as well that you're in service to other people as a leader, and that you are responsible for developing people. And when you delegate effectively, you're helping to develop people.
That's the thing.
You have to know, you have to understand what people's aspirations and goals are as well.
That's it. That's it. I love it, Vicki, because this is what is missing. Most of the time, you have teachers coming to work for an organization, but it doesn't mean they will stay there forever. This is where some teachers, they lose the spark. They are not being empowered, ignited, because maybe they were not meant to be there for a long time. And now who suffers? Who suffers? Is the senior leader and the students, because they are not involved fully.
What happens as well is they're the people who senior leaders and head teachers start to get tired of, and that they're the people who are judged as they're lazy, they don't just not engaged anymore. But actually, if those people haven't been developed in that organization, they've just been allowed to just coast along and they've never fulfilled their goals, then they will be careworn. They will be at a point where they just think, what's the point? And just out their days. But as a leader, you have to inspire people and you have to develop people so that they can achieve their goals and their ambitions. That's how we serve others as leaders.
Yes. And I believe I've always had that in the back of my mind, that the senior leaders want teachers to be a certain way with students, but they are not reciprocating they are not modeling, sorry, that's the word, modeling what they want us to show to the student to us. Because this is exactly what we want. So we want the same thing that they are telling us to do. And leadership comes with modeling. You have to role model what you want us to demonstrate. But if it's not shown at the top, how would the teachers who even don't know about themselves that much, how would they be able to model it? They would do their job, but they wouldn't understand. That's what I've talked about, the concept of leadership. It has to be.
What you see is often in schools, leaders who are really good at building relationships with children and then not applying the same. I don't want adults to think I'm saying you should be treated like children, but children need to feel that the person teaching them cares about them. They need to
caring.
Like that person is, rewards them for things that they do, praises them for the good work that they've done, but that they provide feedback and they're helping them to develop in their work. And it's exactly the same when you're working with staff. You have to build relationships in the same way. Like young people and teachers and school leaders, we're all human beings. We all have the same needs. If you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like it doesn't matter whether you're 14-year-old or a 38-year-old. Your needs are the same for, once you've got your basic needs, because then you need to be recognized for what you do. You need to be cared about. You need to have relationships. And that's that's how we should be modeling what we do with the children. We need to think about doing with the staff as well. Everybody needs to feel seen and heard and cared about.
That's it.
That people need to feel important.
Yes, and it saddens me to see that you have amazing teachers who just leave the profession, or who just don't want to be in certain organizations anymore because they don't feel valued and they don't feel heard. And so how really, Vicky, how can you show love? I love that. So we talked about well-being, leadership, kindness in leadership, but now how can you really show love in difficult conversations, really?
So this is the book that I'm writing at the minute, and it's called How to Love Difficult Conversations. And nobody, Helen, really loves a difficult conversation. Like, people hate difficult conversations. First of all, because I think because of the language that we use to talk about those conversations, we call them awkward or tricky or difficult. We refer to it as conflict or other people to account, and it feels hard, it feels scary. So there's the fear factor involved. And actually, you can't have a relationship with someone without conflict. It's not possible. And when you have conflict, that's how you develop a better and a deeper understanding of people. That's how you create a more, Susan Scott describes it in Fierce Leadership as intimate. I don't really like the word intimate used when we're talking about work relationship, but you know what she means. She's talking about that deeper connection, that deeper level of understanding that you only gain when you sort of hash something out with someone and really engage in those conversations where you have to work something out together. You've got to, you talked before about leadership being about solving problems, and that's what that is. And I think if you can change your attitude towards it as thinking of it as something that's necessary, if I'm going to build effective relationships, and being in service to other people means providing honest feedback and being honest and open with people. And you just mentioned, as a leader, modeling what you want from other people. And this is why it's important to engage in conversations. I prefer to call them curious conversations with staff, because you model that level of honesty. And a lot of school leaders will say, when I have conversations with them, or when I'm in a coaching conversation with them, they will say, I have an open door policy. Anybody can come and talk to me at any time. But do they? Do people?
I love that.
Like I said before we started recording, it's so hard to speak truth to power. So as a leader, if you don't go and have honest conversations with your staff, they will not come and have an honest conversation with you. So you will not understand what's happening for them. They don't understand what's happening for you, and they don't necessarily feel like they can come and be honest with you. So you have to see it's a really integral part of leadership and building relationships. And when I talk about how to love difficult conversations, it's actually it's an acronym to help you to think about how you can reframe those types of conversations. So the L is about love, empathizing, showing care, compassion, kindness. Like you said, recognizing trauma, understanding that people bring that, leading the conversation, recognizing that, you've got to ask questions and lead it, think about the language that you use, and then being open, having ownership, having an overview of the conversation. Then the V is about having a vision for the conversation. Like, you have to know where you want that conversation to go and what you want the outcome to be. Value the other person in the conversation, value what they have to say and the contribution they're making to it, and validate what they're saying. You dismiss what they're saying, validate it, because it's how they feel and it's true and it's right. Even if you feel different, their feelings and what they think is valid. And then, thinking about the E is about your evidence that you've got, having having facts to back up what you want to say to someone, like being prepared before you go into the conversation, being able to explain things clearly is really important in those conversations. And then thinking about how you can effect change in the conversation. Like, how do you then solve the problem? It doesn't have to be right there and then in the conversation that you're having, but there needs to be some resolution in the conversation that links to, right, how we're going to solve this problem. And we don't have to do it right now. You can go away and have a think about it, and I'll go away and have a think about it, and we can meet at a date in the future. But when you think about conversations in a different way as being a healthy part of building relationships, and that's what leadership is. It's about building relationships.
And I believe they don't, but I hear what you're saying, but I believe as well there are adults who don't understand how to communicate well. Even that already is an issue. How do you develop the gift of communication? Because they don't know how to express themselves, first of all, in a kind manner, express themselves so the word that they say doesn't hurt people. And if it hurts, apologizing and realizing that what you've done is wrong. There is so many things in terms
That's
of
the ownership,
communication.
isn't it? It's the person going into conversation. If someone says, well, you did this, you have to say, right, okay, I recognize that.
I'm sorry.
And I'm sorry if I made you feel that way, or I'm sorry if I got wrong.
Yeah, but the ego sometimes doesn't allow that kind of communication. And when you talk about conflict, I would even go further and just talk about disagreements, because we don't have to really get in conflict, really. I think navigating disagreements is part of problem solving. When someone disagrees with you, it's fine. But now, how can we articulate our responses? How can we articulate what we feel in a way that we make ourselves understood? And many people, they don't know how to communicate. It's sad. So now when you are with your staff, and you are even in your personal life, or even with students, and you don't know how to model that, it's hard, because they're just looking up to you as a leader to show and model how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah.
It's
And
even harder.
that comes back to what I was saying before about the parasympathetic nervous system, because as soon as you have to engage in that conversation, as soon as you start that, your parasympathetic nervous system goes into overdrive. You're in fight mode. You feel your heart starts to beat. You might feel your hands shaking, or you start trembling, because it's that high pressure, and you go into fight or flight mode. And that's why people make bad decisions when they're having those conversations, and say things in the spur of the moment that can actually create more conflict. And that's like, planning those conversations is so important as well. Like, to plan the conversation. That's why I've done the acronym to help you sit down before you have the conversation, if it's really important, and work through those things and think about it. Think about the language that you want to use and how you want to phrase things.
I love it.
Listen to people.
Beautiful.
Because sometimes you go into that thinking, right, this is what I want to say, and I'm going to say it. And if you can just start from a position of, I've noticed this, and I'm just curious as to what the reason for that is, or can you tell me more about that? What do you think the reason is that that's happened? And then just be quiet and let someone speak to you.
And one thing, Vicki, and I think I believe that we have to start introducing that more in school. I told you before, is leadership concept, understand it from a young age, and coaching. We need to start bringing coaching into school, because what you talked about now, it's coaching literally. But now people don't understand that it is coaching. They don't know how to do it. Leaders don't know how to do it. They don't know how to coach, because they think it's really hard. But I think coaching comes from you being willing to realize that you're a coach. As a teacher, as a staff, as a senior leader, you are coaching someone into their journey of growth and their journey of unleashing their potential. So when we do all the accreditation or any certificates, it's not really, it's just, no, I wouldn't say brushed off, but it's just like one part of it. But everything is about coaching, because coaching allows you to really enter a realm, a different viewpoint of how you can help someone in their journey of transformation.
Yeah, I think it comes from thinking like, what can I do to understand this person better? And the coaching approach as well is the unconditional positive regard. You go into it thinking, this person has value, and what they think and what they say is valid, and they are capable of coming up with a solution to whatever's happening. They don't need me to tell them what they should do or always be giving them advice. And it's recognizing that just because you're the leader, it doesn't mean that you're more important than the other person in this conversation. You two equal people going into a conversation. You might not agree, but I think it's about how you try to work out compromise. And one of the things that you talked about in terms of role modeling, for a lot of young people and adults as well, they've seen conflict modeled on TV, films, soap operas, where people scream at each other, get into fights and arguments.
Or even home as
Or
well.
home, because their parents have seen that. They think that that's how you engage in conflict. You scream and you shout at each other, and we don't teach. You're absolutely right. We don't teach our young people how to engage in conflict or communication in a healthy way.
Yes.
And we need to start teaching people. We need to start modeling it more.
Yes, and that's what I talk about in my academy. All these concepts has to be taught, because when we learn this from a young age, it transforms your life forever. So one question, Vicki, what is the most important element of effective leadership? What do you think is the most important element of effective leadership?
I've already said it. It's building relationships.
I love it. That's it. Sweet and concise.
If you want to do anything, if you want to change anything, you need the people who work with you to change it with you. And you've got to work with them. So you've got to have relationships with them. And one thing I talk about is in your school, your organization, whatever it is, even if it's a corporate organization, there will be radiators and drains. So there'll be people who immediately warm to what you're saying and want to do it, and they'll be on board. They'll be really positive. They're the optimistic people. They'll go the extra mile. And you will get a smaller number of people who might be negative, might moan about it. And often you might be drawn to the radiators because it's nice to stand near a radiator. It's really warm and cozy, and it feels nice. And, you can get a lot of really good positive reinforcement from being with those people. But unless you bring on board the people who you might describe as the drains, the negative people, the pessimists, you won't make the change in the way that you want to make it. And I don't know if it's a bit of a vulgar explanation, but what I say is, while you're standing by the radiator, the drain is backing up, and eventually all you people by the radiator,
that's it.
in whatever it is that comes out of that drain. So as a leader, you have to build relationships with the people in your organization who are going to be the most challenging to get on board. You have to value them, you have to talk to them, you have to understand them, and you have to either bring them on board or help them to recognize that maybe this isn't the job for me anymore, maybe this isn't the place that I want to be anymore. And you can help them. That's why coaching can help so much in that respect.
Definitely.
Really make them more self-aware. But you've got to bring those people on board, and building relationships. You've got to do it. Someone said once, and it's not the person who it's attributed to, I don't think, but culture eats strategy for breakfast. And that really is about having a positive culture in your school where everybody wants to change things, but as the leader, you're responsible for building those relationships that make the change possible.
I like that. So one more for 30 seconds, Vicki, one more word of inspiration for teachers, parents, and high school senior leaders. What would you tell them?
Take time for yourself. Always find time in the day to come back to yourself. Create that space. Ground yourself. Think about how you're feeling, what's happening for you. If you need to, give yourself a little bit of space to just bring yourself back into that green zone, then do that. But focus on yourself. Make yourself a priority. Because like you said, Helen, you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't help other people if you are not
Helping yourself.
It's not good. And if you don't, look after yourself and take care of yourself, you've got to do that first. Lead yourself first before you lead others.
Thank you so much, Vicki, for being here. It was such an insightful conversation, and we see you after, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Vicki, for being here.
Been absolutely brilliant. It's been a real pleasure. You've given me loads of things to think about and taking, some learning away myself. So thank you so much, Helen. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to this episode, and make sure you connect with us on Instagram at The Case for Success. Check also my Linktree and become an affiliate of the Success Guide for Teens Academy, a program that will empower your school community as a parent, teacher, and high school senior leader. Do not hesitate to reach out, comment, and share. Until then, see you in the next episodes.